Hey, Read Through the Word. Today is January 3rd in 2024. Here we are. And today's lesson is called Grace. And first, before I get started, I want to show you my new sweatshirt. Look, don't you love it? Word Up Ministries. It says, lift it up, take it in, live it out. The Word Up Ministries. And so for reference speaking, if you want, I think the link is in the Facebook group, and it's probably, there might be a link in the Word Up website as well. But this is an extra large. It comes down pretty long, so like I wore it out of the house with leggings, and it was good. I told Wendy it's a really thick sweatshirt. So, it's nice and warm, and it's not, a lot of times it's not t-shirt material. It's a true thick sweatshirt. So, not that I'm telling you, but if you want a sweatshirt talking about Word Up Ministries to wear, I think there's long sleeve t-shirts and short sleeve t-shirts as well. And I think Wendy will probably be wearing, I think she ordered a long sleeve t-shirt. I wanted the sweatshirt. I love hoodies. So I wanted to wear it to show everybody today, but let's get going with today's lesson. And so I hope those of you who are new to us and are seeing how this works, if you have any questions or anything, please post them in the comments. And it's never too late to invite people to join. If you join in and you decide, boy, I would love to have someone that I work with or someone in my family to do this along with me, invite them in. They don't need to go back and catch up. I mean, they can if they want to, but anytime you want to invite people, I usually invite, here's a good point when we get to 1 Samuel's another good point when we go into the New Testament. So there's lots of good points. So keep inviting people to join us here at Read Through the Word. And so today we are looking at Noah, and my verses are Genesis 7:13 through 16. It says, that very day, Noah had gone into the boat with his wife and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. With them in the boat were pairs of every kind of animal, domestic and wild, large and small, along with the birds of every kind. 2 by 2 they came into the boat, representing every living being that breathes. Living thing that breathes. A male and female of each kind entered, just as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord closed the door behind them. And that's the end of our verse. Okay, so there is, in the midst of a great historical narrative. That's the genre of the book of Genesis, is a historical narrative. In the midst of a historical narrative covering judgment due to the sin rampant in the world, we see this right here that I want us to talk about as far as grace. So let's see where we are in the storyline of the Bible right now. I know we're here, the story of the flood. Actually, we met Noah yesterday in our reading. Chapters 6 through 9 in Genesis cover the story of Noah and the great flood. And so we are seeing the story that started good, very good. And then sin entered and things got bad rather quickly. Not only did Adam and Eve started in at each other from the moment, the woman you did give me, God, she made me do this. And they started their kids. So you see that sin transferred generation. And you will also see that man continually looks for a way to get to God. And it's not that God does not love his people. God does not love the the path on which they've chosen to go, which is against him. But in the midst, so you see that, but in the midst of already we've covered Adam and Eve being sent out of the garden. But in God, so in judgment, God also gives grace. So I want you to remember, as we're reading the story of God and his love for his people. And we're also seeing that God is a God of grace. He's a God of judgment. He is fully God and holy in all of his attributes. And so he is a God of judgment, but he is a God of grace and he's a God of mercy. But I wanted to show you that there's 3 instances so far that we've seen where we see judgment of God, yet grace right with it. And I want you to look for that as you continue to read, because here's the truth that I want you to see here, is that God is the same. Remember that he stands outside of his time and space. Therefore, he does not change. Change requires time. Think about yourself. You're at the beginning of the new year, and you think, a new year, I'm going to make some changes. And so as time progresses, these things will be different. Well, God's not held by time, so he does not change. But as we look, so when we see these attributes of God, when we see that God is a God of judgment, and God is a God of grace, and God is a God of mercy, that he is the same God yesterday, today, and forever. And so the same attributes he deals with his people, he deals with us the same. So I want you to look as you read, don't think, when you see judgment, always look in God's judgment. The book of James tells us this, that in your judgment, remember mercy. That God is always a God of judgment and grace. I want us to look at grace today and to see these truths that we see about God. So the first instance of sin we had in the Bible, when you saw, here we are, and we're covering quite a lot of history at this point. Noah is 500 years old when the flood, when he starts building the ark. I think that was in your reading yesterday. He builds the ark. It takes him 120 years. Jude tells us that Noah was a preacher of righteousness. And so we see that. But if you trace the timeline of all the people in the book of Genesis at this point, Adam is still alive when Methuselah is born, and Methuselah dies the year of the flood. And Methuselah is Noah's grandfather. And so we see that this is, I want you to think that all of these people are still living when things were happening. If I would greatly, I'll put a link in here. I would tell you that anytime you have the chance to go to Answers in Genesis, the Creation Museum, or the Ark Encounter, it is well worth the drive and the time you will spend. And I would tell you to spend as much time in those as you can to help understand the science behind everything, and understand all that was going on during this time. But I want us to see that we have this sin that has caused problems. And from the moment in Genesis chapter 3, when Adam and Eve sin, the very first, there's judgment. God gives the curse that comes upon them, but he also gives mercy and grace. Actually, he gives grace. I will talk about grace. That in Genesis 3:15, we have the first gospel declaration that there will be salvation. And so in Genesis 3:15, so God sends them out of the garden. Judgment is they are separated from God and they go to the east of Eden. And but in that, God shutting them out of the garden and guarding the tree of life is grace on their part. Adam and Eve. Now, see, we'll see the tree of life again when we get to the end of the book of Revelation. We'll see it again, and we will be eating from it. forever. But Adam and Eve, in God's grace, he does not allow them to eat from that tree anymore. So that death will come to them. So they will not be stuck living in a sinful body forever. So you see that in judgment, God gives grace as well. You also see that with the next generation. When you see Abel and Cain, you see that there is grace given to Cain as well. And so now we're into Noah. And I want you to see this, that for 120 years, Noah is building an ark to people who scoff and laugh at him and tell him there is no such thing. It is not going to happen. And he keeps preaching, judgment is coming. Judgment is coming. God has given a way out. There is one way out. The ark is it. There is one door to walk through. Walk through the door and you will be saved. And as now, this would be a long discussion with you to discuss the timeline that's in Genesis chapter 7 and the discussion. But you will, a commentary would help with this. But they go on the ark. Now, you know, just as Genesis 1 and 2 cover the same material but in different, from different perspectives, Genesis chapter 2 goes into more detail about the making of man by God. In the discussion of the flood, it is the same thing. We get an overview, and then the author goes back and gives us more detail. So Noah and Mrs. Noah and Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Mrs. Shem, Mrs. Ham, Mrs. Japheth are on the ark. They are on the ark actually for 7 days before the flood starts. The doors are wide open. The doors are wide open. It's never said no one can come on the ark. Anyone who wanted to come on the ark could come on the ark. It was big enough. But no one would. Can you imagine that these are very likely some of the workers that Noah would have hired to help him build the ark? These were his neighbors. These were his family, his wife's family, his daughters-in-law family, people he knew. And the grace of God, that God shuts the door. It's not Noah shutting the door in the face of everyone else. It's not Noah saying, no, you're not allowed. God shut the door. God shut the door. The grace that God has. He didn't make Noah shut the door. He didn't make Noah shut the door. But I also want us to see, as we look at this, do we learn all these things about God? But that everything from the very beginning is all about Jesus. Jesus is the ark of our salvation. There is judgment coming. As a modern day Noah, as the Bible tells us, there is judgment coming. Judgment is coming. There is one way out. There is one way out. The ark of our salvation is Jesus Christ. He himself says he is the door. He is the door that we go through for salvation. So as we continue to read Scripture, I want us to see, what are we learning about God? What do we see about Jesus, and what do we see about ourselves? What do we see here that is talking to me as a sinner? And what do I learn? That I need grace at every turn. And praise his name. He's a God of grace, and he is there for us. So as you read, not only are we looking at time going past and historical events, but we're learning about God, because the God that did everything here in the early chapters of the book of Genesis is the same God today, and he's the same God forever. And he has given us this time alive on this earth to serve him. And we come to know him through his word, and then we live our lives in service to him. And I am thankful. We'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.